What's up, guys? Welcome back to the garage. We got the OBS back in here again. We're going to be working on the AC again. We're going to be revamping the entire system. Hopefully we can get it to work better. It's working pretty good now, but it's hot in Texas. It needs to work really good. So hopefully this works. Let's check it out. All right, I'm going to give you guys a quick little rundown of the current system before I show you what all I bought. So it's basically a standard 89 air conditioning system, but those trucks came with R12 coolant or refrigerant. This one's been converted. It looks like it's got a new compressor. I'm not really sure, but everything else looks pretty much stock. Even the condenser here in the front. The problem with that, the first problem, in the last video with air conditioning, we were trying to refill this system and I learned that I don't have a high side port. I have the low side port right here, but I don't have, see, this is the high side line. There should be a port right here and there's not. It goes into the grill there, and then it comes out again, this line here, and goes underneath and connects to the evaporator right there. But there's no port on that line anywhere either. So that makes it pretty hard to get your coolant levels right, or your refrigerant levels right, because you don't have the proper gauges to be able to tell. So that's the first thing we're gonna fix. Let me show you what all I bought. So I did some research online and I learned that the 1994 version of these trucks was the first year that came with R134 from the factory, but it still had the older style dash. And that's important if you're changing the evaporator that's in the dash, because it needs to fit, and the new dash, it may not fit right. So all of these parts, with the exception of the dryer, are 94 year model parts. This hose set is going to be the biggest one because it has both the high side and the low side ports in the lines. And it looks like it's going to bolt right up to our compressor. It looks the same. I haven't really gotten in there to get a really close look, but that's going to be the first fix. We want to get that fixed. I went ahead and got a new dryer, just because you should. They're cheap. They're like $11, $15. And anytime you have a major leak, when the system is exposed to the atmosphere, this will absorb a bunch of water, a bunch of moisture out of the humidity in the air, and it won't work anymore. So I got a new one of those. I went ahead and got a new evaporator, or no, this is the condenser. I got the new condenser. And this is from a 94 truck. And the difference with this one, let me see, I can see if I can show you in the grill here. Mine has two lines. If you can see it, it's bent. You see it back here, right there. It goes down, and the bottom one is bent and goes up, and they both connect right there beside each other. So there were complaints, I assume, back in the early 90s of the cab noise from the orifice tube venting. So they moved, my current orifice tube is down there, in that port right there. They moved it from there to the grill so that you wouldn't hear the hissing and pressure sounds inside the cab. And that's why this one is different. This tube is straight instead of bent, and allows you to put the orifice tube right into there, into this connection here, and gets it out of the cab and cuts down on the noise. It's not a huge deal, but I'm revamping the system anyway, so I figured I might as well. This is only like $50 part, so it's not a huge cost. I went ahead and got a OEM sized orifice tube. The one that's in the truck, we just went to the local hardware store, the guy that helped me originally with this truck, getting it running, and just got one that we could make work. And we had to make it work. We had to trim it and make it work. So it's not the exact right orifice tube. So we have a new one. And this one is a valved orifice tube, which is supposed to help better air conditioner functionality and cooling at idle and low speed. It's supposed to open a valve and allow more freon through at low RPM and low speeds. I've got some oil, so I'm going to have to put a little bit of oil in the system because each one of these parts has oil. It's just in the freon, so it just flows around in the freon and oils everything as it goes. Got some more freon because, of course, I'm going to have to evac the system. I'm going to have to completely tear it apart, get rid of all this freon that's in there, and start over. I don't want to do that just yet because the truck works. The air conditioner works. It's not the best. We're getting about 52 to 55 degrees out of the vents on a 85-degree day, which is not horrible. It's working, but this is a big V8 with no go fast mods. It should cool really good, even at idle, and it's not. So we're going to try to fix that because we're in Texas, we're in South Texas, and it is hot. It's like mid-June right now, and it's already mid-90s on the sunny days. It's hot. But I want to go through this system, and I want to make sure that all the parts I got are going to work first. I want to get like the dryer and compare it to this dryer and make sure all of the ports are in the right spot. It looks like they are, but I want to get a close-up. I want to make sure that hose assembly is going to fit here and reach everything. And I want to pull the grill off, and I want to make sure that this part here, the condenser, is going to fit in the grill and not interfere with anything. It's big, but the one that's in there looks pretty big too. I mean, it goes from back there all the way over there. So it looks like the right one, but I'm going to pull the grill and double check before I vent this system and make it not work. I want to make sure all the parts that I bought for it are going to work. And as long as everything goes well, we will be good. It should be a couple of hour project. I mean, this is going to be a little while, you know, taking bolts off to replace that, replacing all the seals on all the parts that all the connections. I've got a steel kit for that. That was in the last video. I got this guy, so we're good there. I've got the vacuum pump. I've got the gauges. So everything else we've got. We just got to make sure these parts work. So that's going to be the next step. I'm going to go ahead and pull this grill off. I've never done that on this truck, so it looks pretty simple, like 4 or 6 bolts. The grill will come off. We'll get a look at that, get a look at these other parts, and then we'll get started. I'll update you guys on the progress once I get a little bit of progress. Hope you guys are along for the ride and have fun. Hope you enjoy it. All right, I've never taken the grill apart on this truck, so this is mostly just for me so I can remember where all the bolts go, but I'm going to show you guys too, so if you're doing this project, you know as well. There's going to be one here, one in this pocket, one in this pocket, and one here. That's all across the top. You've got 2 in the center, one right there, and then one way down here in that little pocket. It's kind of hard to see back there, but there's a bolt hole back there. Then you have to pull the turn signal lights. And there's one here on each side. So far that's all the bolts I've found, but it looks like there's some push pin style connectors that's connecting the bumper to the filler, this part here. And I've got to figure out how to get those. I don't know if the filler is supposed to come off with the bumper or if it's supposed to come apart. So I'm going to get under there and have a look at that now, see what's going on with that. But everything else, I mean, it's loose. It's just still connected to the filler, and I don't want to break the filler. So more investigation. All right, so that was easier than I expected. I had grabbed the creeper and was going to slide under there and looked, and then I forgot I have a drop kit and I can't fit my fat head under the air dam. So I went ahead and just kind of lightly tugged and pulled on the bumper, the parts that were loose, And the filler just slides right out. There's nothing connecting it to the truck at all. It's just connected to the bottom of the bumper or the grill. So you just got to kind of loop your turn signal bulbs up in there to get them out of the way. And then pulls right out. I don't know how easy it's going to be to get it back in, but it's out. So that gives us ample access to the parts up here that we want to replace. We got those connectors there. Looks like we're going to have to remove this, which is the hood latch, the horn, all of that good stuff. I'm going to go ahead and do a test fit of these parts and make sure they work correctly, or look like they're going to work at least, before I start evacuating this system. But yeah, that was easier than I thought. Popped right out. Awesome. All right, guys, we're making good progress. So you got to take the hood latch off. There's 2 bolts there, and then there's 3 bolts for this piece. 1, 2, 3. I really hope I can get that hood latch back in the right spot and I don't have to adjust it. You also have to unhook the wire and disconnect your horn. Pull that piece off. That's all 13 millimeter. Yeah, 13 millimeter hardware. And then you've got 2 bolts, one here and one here, and that's 10 millimeter hardware. And it looks like that's it on this part. These are just little rubber things that will pop out once I disconnect this. So this is rigid and got it trapped. So I got to undo these 2 bits, and then this will come out. And it's got a lot finer ribbing than the new one, and it's really dirty. So I mean, that could have been part of it. You can't really see through it, but I don't have a bright light either. I will be sure to blow out the radiator once I have this thing off to make sure there's nothing in it. But this one has a much larger opening for the fins, so hopefully it'll flow better. We'll see. I'm gonna get this thing out. I've already evacuated the system. It's down to 0. Make sure you keep track of how much oil you lose when you do that, because you got to put that oil back, right? So all of that, and then there's going to be oil that comes out of this condenser. There's going to be oil that comes out of the dryer. Everything that we change is going to have oil in it, so you got to keep a running tally of the oil so you know generally how much to put back in there when you get done. It doesn't have to be precise, but you need to put close to the same amount back in there so that you have lubrication for all your system. So I'm going to get this thing pulled off. Once we get that one pulled off and changed, we'll go ahead and change that hose assembly here. And I'm going to save the dryer for last because I want everything buttoned back up and sealed before I change that one to minimize its exposure to the atmosphere and the humidity, because it's pretty humid today. So I also have to take that connector down there off because there is an orifice tube in there that I need to remove, but I've got to take that off. No, it's not. It's part of this hose that goes to the front, so it does not need to be replaced, but I do have to remove the orifice tube out of there. These two will be replaced. Orifice tube will be up here now. All right. Hopefully you guys are keeping up because it's getting confusing. Let's get it over with. I just had my first little mini scare here. I did not look closely at these connectors until just now, and you can see that they're alternate. This one is threaded on the condenser side, and this one is threaded on the line side. But if you look at the new condenser, it's threaded on both sides. But since we're replacing this hose, this line here is the high side line. That's this top one. And this top one, which on this side is threaded on the line side, but on the new harness is threaded, it's not threaded, it's got the female end. So I think we're going to be good. Once we replace that hose assembly, both of these will have the threaded collars on the line side. Scared me for a second. So these guys here, pretty big. Not a lot of people have large end wrenches. You need a 7/8 and a 3/4 to get those apart. So that's what those are for. All right, all condensers out. Did have a little bit of trouble getting this connection loose. It was just pressed in there pretty good. A flathead screwdriver just kind of wiggled it, popped it right out. Got to be careful because we're not replacing that one, so we want to make sure we don't tear up that end. We're going to be replacing that seal anyway. The end caps of the old condenser are just these rubber isolators. You got 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, so I just pulled those off real quick. We'll stick those on the new one, pop it right back in place. I did go ahead and vacuum out and then use the air chuck to blow out the radiator. There was quite a bit of like leaf debris and things like that in there, so I knocked all of that out while I'm in here. Everything's looking good, so we're going to start putting this back together, and I'll let you know when I'm done. Now I know I normally do the time lapse when I'm working on stuff, but it's hot and I have the fan running whenever I'm working and not videoing, so you won't be able to hear. It's just going to be obnoxiously loud, so that's why there's no time lapse this time. Sorry. All right, new quirk, next discovery here. This condenser is just slightly more narrow than this condenser. This one's a little bit wider, at least the frame is. So we're running into a problem with these isolators not fitting on there very good. You can see. So what I'm going to have to do is probably clearance this just a little bit in the back. Just take like a 1/4 inch off, about that far. Open this slot up a little bit so it slides on there, because since it won't slide down in here, it won't go low enough to slide in here. So I'm going to clearance the bottom ones first, see if I can get it to fit that way. If not, then I'll do the top ones, because I don't want it loose, but I don't want it in a super bind, and I don't want it to bend. So I'm gonna work on that real quick. We'll see what I come up with. Could probably just order these isolators for a 94 and it would have worked, but I didn't know, so I didn't order them. So if you're doing this project and you're watching the video first, order the isolators. Makes it easier. Now, that wasn't too bad. It took 5 or 10 minutes or so. Creative use of a razor knife and some side cutters. Notched those out. I went ahead and did the top and the bottom. That way I don't have to go back and do it again. Just cut these little pieces out. They fit now. I'll go ahead and install it. Keep moving forward. All right, so that worked. I was able to get it clearanced enough to get it in there. There is a little tiny lip up in here. Let me grab a light. A little tiny lip on the metal up there. You see it? And this, let's see if I can get this to stay. There we go. This was hitting that lip, so I had to use like a screwdriver to kind of push it down just a little bit so it would go all the way back. But it's all the way back now. I was concerned with these crossbars here hitting the condenser, but I used the bore scope to check, and they're not touching. And they're not touching over here either, so I think we're good. I possibly could have clearance these to the front instead of to the back, or a little of both to make it not so close to those crossbars. But if it's not rubbing, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to put those bolts back in, get the condenser back finalized, and then we'll get started on the hoses for that harness and keep moving forward. But so far we got progress. It's looking good. All right, got it bolted up. I did have to kind of bend this hose just a little bit, basically twisting it to line it up with this new direction here. Kind of manhandle it a little bit so that it lines up there. Be sure you put your oil in your condenser. I probably should have done that before I mounted it so I could stand it up, but I just poured it into here. And then I put about 2 ounces in there. Shooting for probably around 6 total, because that's about what's in this tray. There hasn't been anything come out of this condenser yet. It's just waiting on it to start dripping, but it hasn't, so I guess most of it come out when I evac the system. All right, so I'm gonna get this hose lined up. And then you gotta drop your orifice tube. It goes inside that hose. Just like that. And then you put this connector over the top of it. Make sure your seal in there is good, which I'm gonna go ahead and replace while I have everything apart, because no sense in not doing it. Get that thing off of there. New seal for that. Orifice tube goes in the long one. And then we can button that up and then work on the other side. Well guys, unfortunate turn of events. I cannot get this connector to screw on. So the orifice tube goes down in there. That's something I did learn. It goes way down in there. This fits all the way down. It sits where it's supposed to, but this will not thread. And I grabbed the other hose assembly and made sure it threads on here and it threads on the old one. So the thread pitch and everything is the same. I don't know why this one won't go. And I've been here for 20 minutes bending and pulling and pushing, trying to get this to thread. And it'll catch a little bit and then it'll tear up the threads and it won't thread. So that's a cheap hose. I'm assuming there's something different with that hose end between the 89 and the 94, because remember this is a 94 condenser. So I went ahead and ordered the new hose. It's only like $8. It's just this one that goes here all the way back to the firewall. And I need to remove that in anyway to pull the old orifice tube out. So we got to pull it out anyway. Unfortunately, it's going to be a few days to get here. For you guys, it'll be pretty much instant. But for me, I've got to wait. Hopefully the truck's in far enough to get the other Jeep in behind it and get it out of the way. I hate having to stop on projects like this, but it is what it is. So I think I'm going to go ahead and move forward with replacing this hose assembly for the other end. But I can't do that dryer until we're ready to seal everything up, because I don't want it exposed to the humidity. So a little bit more at a time, but I do have to wait on parts. It'll be a couple of days, so we'll pick that up when I get the parts in. All right, more progress has been made. I got this assembly reinstalled. I did have to massage these hard lines just a little bit because they were contacting the valve cover. You got to kind of bend it up a little bit to get it off the valve cover. Just be real careful when you do so. Make sure it's not rubbing. And there, one bolt in the back is a 15 millimeter. It was pretty snug, so I snugged it pretty good when I put it back in. I just kind of put this one on there just to keep the system closed. I haven't changed out the dryer yet. The other end goes up here. I was able to get it connected to the condenser in the front and get it snugged up. So once we get this line replaced and we can replace the dryer, we should be good. Everything else should work. So I'm going to finish it off, at least for the first part of the video now. Like I said, for you guys, it'll just be a second. Once I get the parts in, I'll be back. I'm going to put this hood down so the dome light turns off and I don't run my battery down. There we go. Cool. I hate leaving it all tore apart like this, but it is what it is. There was a lot of oil that come out of that harness, that wire or hose assembly. So I have to put some more back in it before the new one, before I button everything up. I'm gonna go get cleaned up, wait on parts. Awesome. See you guys soon. All right guys, back out here on the truck. Gonna be finishing this one up. I got the final part. I've already test fitted the one connection that we were having a problem with. So that's good. It fits on there perfectly. So we're gonna do a quick rundown, catch up where we're at, and then we're gonna get this thing finished up. I'm excited. Let's go. So when we left off last time, we were having a problem with the high pressure line that runs from the evaporator to the condenser screwing on right here. I don't know why. It just would not thread. It's a tight, slightly different style fitting than this, but it's the same thread pitch because this screws on there on both, no problem. So I ordered a new one. It's right here. I'm gonna get that thing thrown on there. while I was waiting on that, I went ahead and pulled the old dryer off and put the new dryer in. I have not uncorked it yet because you don't want it setting out in the humidity, and it's been very humid around here the last week or so. I went ahead and put some oil in this fitting. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in the dryer. And then we've got this little bit here. I've already replaced the seals on it. That one goes from this fitting to the other end of the evaporator. And then this hose goes here. And then the new hose connects here and then to the firewall right down there. So I'm going to get this other hose connected real quick. Go ahead and put some oil in the dryer. I'm going to get everything connected. It's pretty straightforward. Just screw everything together. And then once I get done with that, we will start the vacuum process to get this system checked out, make sure it doesn't have any leaks. We won't get a true result, I don't think, because it's a rain-cooled 77. I don't know what it is inside the garage, but yeah, it's just under 80. So it's not quite the same temperature as it was last time, but we should at least be able to see that it's cooling better. I was getting about 50 degrees out of the vents last time on a, I think it was like an 87 degree day. So if I can get like below 40, I think it's going to be a good deal. So we get this stuff strapped in, and then we'll pick back up when we get ready to do the Freon. All right, let's go. All right, guys, this has been an experience. So the new hose connected pretty much fine. The end down there, I'm not really sure. It felt like it may have kind of stripped a little. These two connected fine because they're original. This one, I fought with this one for a long time. It's almost as if the threads are not quite the right threads, like they're metric instead of standard or something. It starts and it turns about 2.5 times and then it gets snug. And so I basically had to lay fresh threads, just back and forth until it tightened up. I don't have a lot of faith in it. I'm trying to vacuum now. It's pulling it down. It is pulling a vacuum. So once it hits the 30 mark, I'm going to turn it off and go eat dinner and see what it does. But I don't have a lot of faith. We will see. Cross your fingers. Pray with me. Pray to the gods, the car gods. See what happens. We're at 30 PSI now. Hopefully it holds. All right, be back. Well, guys, it took about 15 minutes or so for me to eat, and I come back out here, and we're still pegged on 30. That's a good sign. It's a really good sign. So, yeah, I think it's time to start installing, start putting in the Freon. See what happens. I'm not going to put this back together until I know everything is good and nothing's leaking, because I don't have to take it back apart again. So we're going to get the first can in, and then fire the truck up, run the next can, and then we're really going to be watching our gauges at that point. From what I understand, for this truck, you want it around under 250 on the high side and 35 to 40 on the low side. That's what we're going to be shooting for. I'm going to double check that. I'm going to look it up and make sure. But I think that's what it was. I'll update if it's any different. But I'm going to go ahead and get the first can connected to the line and let that feed in, and then we'll see what happens. All right, so I put the first can in without the truck running. And then I started the second can and then started the truck, and the compressor was cycling a lot. So I finished that can off and I started the third can, and it's almost empty, but it looks like we're up to where we need to be. So we're looking for 30 to 35 PSI on the low side and between 175 and 220 on the high side. So our high side's right at 200, which is right in the middle, and our low side's probably a little on the high side, just below 50, so probably close to 40, 35 to 40. You see that there? but the compressor's not cycling anymore. It's running the way it's supposed to. Everything's getting frosty, and the vents are blowing really cold. I'm liking this a lot. I'm gonna let it run a little bit longer, let everything cool down real good, and then I'm going to use my temp gauge to see what we're getting out of the vents, see how cold we've got. Again, it's cooler today. It's actually went up a little bit. It's a little above 80, but it's about 7 or 8 degrees cooler than it was the other day when we were doing this. So it won't be a true test until it warms back up this weekend, but at least we can get a general idea if we're on the right track. I think what I'm going to do once I get done is shut it all down, but leave the gauges connected so I can come back tomorrow and make sure that the pressures are still there. We stayed at negative 30 for 15 minutes, which is supposed to be acceptable, but that was a vacuum, right? And when you add pressure the other direction, it might leak in different ways. So I'm just gonna keep an eye on it and make sure. I want it to work and work well. It's hot here. I don't want to get stuck in traffic with no air. So I'm gonna let it run a little longer. We'll check the temperature and then we'll see what we got. All right, so the truck's been running about 5-10 minutes or so. So we're gonna hit this gauge here, or this, so we let 40s, 50s, depends on where we hit. Pretty good for sitting here idling. I can put the fan on the condenser out there and see if I can get it any lower, but this is worst case scenario. We're sitting inside the garage with no airflow and idling. So mid 40s for that, that's better than we were getting by like 10 degrees. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna put the windows up and put the fan on the condenser and see how cold we can get it. See just how good it works. So I'll be back. Okay, let's turn this fan off real quick. So I let it run for quite a while. We were able to get it pretty cool inside. You see the windows started to kind of fog up a little bit. But it's kind of counterproductive because we're inside a closed garage and the truck just in here running is driving the temperature up. So we're up now almost to 90. So it's gotten hotter outside. About the same inside as far as temperature goes. So I think a real world test is the only way to really tell if it's working or not. With it off, the gauges are all wonky because they kind of neutralize. But I'm gonna leave it how it is. Probably slap it all back together tomorrow after work, once I make sure that the pressures are all where they're supposed to be after 24 hours. We can finish this one up. I'm hoping the air conditioner works a lot better because it is getting hot here in Texas, and we need air conditioner. So we'll check it again tomorrow and let you guys know. All right, guys, it's the next day. We're back out here. We're going to check these gauges. So when we left yesterday, they were right around 100 on both sides because it equalized. It's about where they're at now, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I think we're good as far as any leaks or anything. We won't be able to tell until, you know, a few months down the road if it stops blowing cold again. We'll have a leak, but for now, I think we're good. I'm going to go ahead and start buttoning everything up. We're going to rebuild the front end here. We got to put that core support in, remount the hood latch, and then put the grill back on. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to turn the fan on and get that knocked out, and then we can drive this thing again and enjoy it. So I'll check back with you guys once I get it put back together. We'll finish this one up. All right, truck's all back together. Grill went back on, pretty straightforward. One thing to note, you can test the fit of the hood latch before you put the grill on. That way, if something does go wrong and it won't release, you actually can get to it and not have to tear the truck apart. So made sure the hood would latch, fired the truck up, made sure it blow cold, make sure all the lights work. We're good. We're gonna finish this one up. I am excited for air conditioning. All right, that one's going to pretty much finish this one up. I appreciate you guys hanging out here in the garage with me. This one took a little longer than we anticipated. Had to wait on some parts, but we still got it done. We still got it fixed, and that's good news because it's hot here in Texas. If you guys like this content, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments, you can hit up that comment section, and I'll be sure to get back to you. We're going to mark this one as done and finish it off here. You guys have a good one and rock on.